Call the meeting to order. Those that care to, please stand for an opening prayer and pledge of allegiance. Brenda, if you would.
Dear Heavenly Father, Lord, we just come to you tonight. We just thank you for the opportunity to gather here, Lord, and I just thank you for each one of these council members, Lord. Be with them as they make the decisions for the city tonight and with the citizens here tonight participating. Lord, we just thank you so much for the day that you've given us, Lord, and we just praise you for everything. In his name I pray. Amen.
Amen.
I pledge
Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
All right, on to mayor's announcements, appointments, and vote. Tonight, we will have recognition of 3 of our employees and a civilian for efforts displayed during 2 separate events. Ask Lieutenant Wilcox from the Republic Police Department to come to the podium, please.
Thank you, Mayor, City Administrator. Thank you, Council. Those in attendance. Tonight, it is my honor to recognize members of the Police Department as well as one of the citizens of our great community. I'd like to have Officer Angela Burgess and Mr. Steve Murdaugh join me up front, please. I don't believe Officer Burgess has been introduced to the council, so I'd like to take a little bit of time to introduce her. Officer Burgess started with us back in February this year, and she has already proven to be a standout among our staff. Officer Burgess brings several years of law enforcement experience and knowledge with her to this position. Welcome aboard, Angela, and we're excited to have you a part of the Republic family. Now to get down to business, while speaking about Officer Burgess, I'd like to recognize and commend her for her actions on March 22nd of this year. And I hope I got these in order. I will read this accommodation. Bear with me here. On Wednesday, March 22nd, 2017, Officer Angela Burgess responded to 905 Northwest Avenue in reference to a medical emergency call. Information was that a male victim was found at this address, unresponsive, with no pulse and not breathing. Officer Burgess responded to the location, discovered a city employee, Christina Elmore, who is also with us tonight, and a citizen, Mr. Steve Murdaugh. Officer Burgess took control of the serious situation and relieved Miss Elmore and Mr. Murdaugh and took over administering CPR in an effort to save the victim's life. Officer Burgess continued these exhaustive efforts until emergency medical personnel arrived on scene. Medical personnel quickly transported the victim from the scene to a local hospital. It was later found that the victim had passed away despite the courageous efforts displayed by all during this frantic and intense scene. I would like to commend the actions of Officer Angela Burgess during this incident. Officer Burgess responded, took immediate control of the scene, and did all that she could to save the life of the victim. The care, compassion, and dedication and duty displayed by Officer Burgess are evident in every aspect of her day-to-day service to the citizens of the Republic. The actions displayed by Officer Burgess are in keeping with those outlined in the mission statement of the Republic Police Department. Thank you. Now it's my honor and privilege to recognize Mr. Steve Murdaugh. Mr. Murdaugh and I hope I'm saying that right, am I? Yep. Thank you. Is a citizen of our great community and displayed actions that are to be commended, and I'll read this commendation and then we have another award for him. The Republic Police Department wants to recognize the action of Mr. Steve Murdaugh. On Wednesday, March 22nd, 2017 at approximately 5 p.m., Mr. Murdaugh was in the area of 905 Northwest Avenue, which is an area operated by the City of Republic as a drop-off site for yard waste. At this location, a male victim was found on the ground, unconscious, with no pulse and not breathing. According to witnesses at the scene, Mr. Murdaugh gallantly and without hesitation began life-saving efforts on the individual and continued those exhaustive efforts until he was relieved by emergency first responders. The actions displayed by Mr. Murdaugh during the traumatic event are to be commended. Actions such as those displayed by Mr. Murdaugh when faced with such adversity are truly heroic and should be recognized publicly. It is the honor and privilege of the Republic Police Department on behalf of the City of Republic to award Mr. Steve Murdaugh with the Civilian Service Award. And here's a plaque for you. And in addition to that, and I thought this was a pretty neat little deal. So here's an award. I don't know where you would put it, but this award says Civilian Service Award presented to Steve Murdaugh, 2017, City of Republic. So I think that's a pretty neat deal too. Thank you very much. over here?
This way. There's a box for that. I'll give it to you. You sit down. Becky.
I'm going to try to wrap this up. I have two more. If Sergeant Brian Sells and Officer Corporal Lucas Peary would join me up front. I think it was a busy month back in March. These two officers responded out to Island Green Golf Course, a house there where some people were doing some work on a roof. One of the males on the roof became overheated, came down off the roof and collapsed. Let me see, this happened on March 17th. Let me get these out. These both read the same, so I'll read them and recognize both these officers. On Friday, March 17th, Brian Sells and Officer Lucas Peary responded to an emergency medical call at 102 Island Green Drive. Information received was that a male had been working on a roof, became overheated, and lost consciousness. Upon arrival, Sergeant Sells located the victim lying on the ground and was told by co-workers that he had been down for several minutes. Sergeant Sells began initial assessment of the victim and was able to locate a faint pulse, but within seconds, the subject stopped breathing and began to, quote, turn purple. Based on the assessment, Sergeant Sells began CPR of the male. Within seconds, Officer Lucas Peary arrived on scene and both officers began administering team CPR tactics to the unconscious victim. After several minutes of life-saving efforts exhibited by Sergeant Sells and Officer Peary, emergency medical personnel arrived on scene and continued overseeing the medical aid to the victim. The male victim was later transported to the hospital by ambulance. Information received from paramedics team that transported the victim from the scene was that the victim did survive the incident and was recovering in the hospital. Without the immediate actions displayed by both Sergeant Sells and Officer Peary, the outcome of this event may have been tragic. It is my honor to recognize both Sergeant Brian Sells and Officer Lucas Peary and present them with the Life Saving Award. Thank you all for your time.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Thank you all very much. Moving on to no public hearings, so moving on to citizen participation. Anyone who would like to speak to anything not on the agenda, please step to the podium, state your name and address, and you'll have 5 minutes.
My name is Sharon Tuck. I live at 102 South Dennis. Thank you for this time. I was here about a month and a half ago with some concerns with the way the neighborhood was deteriorating, so forth and so on. I just wanted to share with you guys how much Matthew has done for our street, and I'm sure other streets. He stopped by the very next day, got my list. I mean, houses are cleaned up, yards, cars are gone, and the huge tree that was down and so forth and so on. I'm very excited that we have someone like this, because I've always thought Republic needed something. I didn't quite know what, but some of us take care of our property, and I understand some people, they struggle, and there's just some things they can't do, but neighbors want to help each other. But I really just wanted you to know, Matthew, every now and then, he'll see me out in the yard and he'll stop and he'll tell me. And the other day he told me, he said, I had 2 people flag me down. I said, whoa, word's getting out. So anyway, I can't say enough about him, and he's a very good asset for this city. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Continuing citizen participation, anyone else who would like to speak to anything not on the agenda, please step to the podium, give your name and address, and you'll have 5 minutes.
Tom Sallin, 343 West Elm Street, Republic, Missouri. I actually had a couple, but I want to have a conversation firstly with Matthew on some ongoing matters had been addressed prior, and I don't know really where he's at with them. But secondly, there's an issue on a water bill matter, I think, that concerns all the citizens pretty much. Went over and paid my last bill, and I noticed that there was a substantial increase in the sewer. I was notified that there was for some reason, there had been increased sewer rates. So I'm kind of bewildered by this fact, because I think most of all during the summer there'd be a lot less sewer flow, or metered or whatever. There's something else that I don't know how they meter it, but there's some kind of metering that is suggested here by consumption on the bills that shows somewhat more sewer consumption than water consumption. I don't know how they arrive at that. At any rate, there's a lot of people out washing cars. There's a lot of people filling up swimming pools. There's a lot of kids out squirting water hoses around, watering gardens, stuff like that. I think if anything, there'd be a lot less sewer waste input, a lot less going to the sewer treatment plant during the summer months than what would be probably any other time of the year. So my question is, why would there be such an sewer increase during the summer months if it's less likely that there would be additional flow going outside of the sewer of water meter usage? I don't know, anyone got an answer?
Well, that's something obviously we need to research and get back to you. I don't have an answer right off the bat sitting here today.
Oh, okay, well.
But absolutely, I've made notes of your comments so that we can research it and try to figure out what the problem is, if it's specific to you or...
Okay, I'll take up the other matter with Matthew, and we'll find out where he's at on that, and then if that's satisfactory, then, I won't have to bring it up in council next meeting.
Okay. Well, thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Anyone else wishing to speak to anything not on the agenda, please step to the podium, give your name and address, and you'll have 5 minutes. Seeing none, citizen participation is closed. Need a motion and a second for approval of the consent agenda.
Motion. Second.
Have a motion and a second. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Any abstentions? Motion carries 8-0. On to old business. I need a motion and a second for the second reading of bill number 17-24.
Motion. Second.
Have a motion and a second. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Any abstentions? Motion carries 8-0.
An ordinance of the City Council of the City of Republic, Missouri, issuing a special use permit to Kimberly Roden for the operation of a group day home care located at 114 North Julie Drive in Republic, Missouri.
Thank you, Brenda. I need a motion and a second for final passage of bill number 17-24.
Motion. Second.
Have a motion and a second. Mr. Tyson.
Sure. I'll keep this brief, since I gave the overview last time, before time for questions. I think there's other comments. This particular bill would authorize the homeowner at this location, 114 North Julie Drive, Mrs. Kimberly Rodden, to operate what we here in the City of Republic call a group daycare home. That would permit Ms. Rodden to care for more than 6 and not more than 10 children at any given time during the day. Those are children unrelated to her. This special use permit would be approved for this location. It would not, if she moves, the permit does not stay with the house and it does not go with her anywhere else. This permit must also be renewed every 5 years according to the city's requirements.
Any questions for Mr. Tyson? Comments, concerns? None? Okay, I have 2 citizens that have asked to speak to this agenda item. The first one here is Mr. Eric Schroeder. Can you please step to the podium? You'll have 3 minutes.
My name is Eric Schroeder. I live directly next door at 108 Julie Drive. I attended the planning and zoning meeting and addressed planning and zoning about my concerns. I try to be the best neighbor I can. I've been living in Republic for 14 years. We actually built this house as the neighborhood was growing. Knew the builder. We specifically picked this spot, and we've had 3 neighbors. Our current neighbor who's applying for the special permit is our 3rd neighbor that just moved in this past 6 months or so. My only concerns is not about traffic and not about a lot of the things that normally people would come up here and be concerned with, because I think that's things that through enforcement with law enforcement, or even just neighborly commenting that we could get through. My concern is noise. I'm a police officer. I've been a police officer for 17 years in Springfield. I work varying shifts, including 3rd shift and 2nd shift. So my problem is the fact that my bedroom is 19 feet from her backyard. And it does authorize, if this is passed, 10 unrelated children to her plus the 4 that she has. So it's 14 children, 19 feet from my bedroom window. So all that I'm concerned with is that there is nowhere for me to complain. There's no one for me to call in the next 5 years to be able to have my voice heard. This is the only place that can be heard. I came to planning and zoning to voice that concern because it's classified as a high-density residential area. The first line on the covenant that I signed when I came here, the very first line that the builder put, stated that no lot shall be used except for residential purposes. And that is on file. I have it right here as the declaration. I know that's not binding here. I know that's a civil matter. We've talked about that before. But the mere matter that I moved into a neighborhood to have a quiet residential area to come home to after my long and busy day. So all I'm asking for you to consider is, after the long day that I'm sure you've had with your jobs and then coming here also, if you were to go home tonight and lay your head down, and if I go home at 7 a.m. and have to sleep during the day, I want you to know, who would you call when there's 14 kids playing 19 feet from your bedroom window and you don't have a fix for that? Because if I call law enforcement, they're going to show up and say, they have a permit, that's kids playing. My kids grew up in an in-home daycare where there was 3 kids, and I know they're instrumental, and it's very good. I have no qualms about the safety that it would be or the traffic, but I have no recourse from this point forward after your vote for 5 years. My only recourse would be to move after 14 years of living there with my family, and I really hope it doesn't come to that. So I appreciate you hearing my concerns. I just ask that you would look at it, if it was your bedroom and your house next door, what you would want done. So, thank you.
Thank you. Next would be Ms. Kimberly Roden.
Hi. I first want to clarify, at the last meeting, Mr. Wilson, you asked me about music, and it dawned on me after the meeting that maybe what you were asking was if music would affect my neighbor. I did want to clarify that all of the music would take place inside. That's not an outside activity. Again, I just want to remind you that we're talking about 1 hour a day. If it's raining, if it's really hot, like it's been here lately, if it's really cold, the kids will not be outside. So it boils down to literally 1 hour a day. I'd also like to remind you that Mr. Schroeder's kids did attend daycare 5 houses down from mine. So he's bringing up the fact that it's supposed to be a residential neighborhood, but that was essentially, even though it was an in-home daycare, it was a business 5 houses down, and it was okay at that time. The benefits to me for this, of getting this permit, are so great to these families. You're talking about having another person there in case of emergency, 2 eyes on the kids, somebody being able to be with the kids while the other person is preparing meals or changing diapers or even taking a bathroom break. If me or one of my kids is sick, then it offers me the opportunity to not have to call all of those parents at 6 o'clock in the morning and say, hey, I have to close down today because somebody's sick. This is extremely, extremely huge for me and for all of the families that I service. So I'm hoping that you take that into consideration and just, like I said, realize that it's 1 hour a day and we're talking about 4 more kids, which is not that many kids. There's compromises that can be made. I can have, if there's 2 of us working, we can only have 5 kids outside at a time. My 2 oldest kids are in school, so this is not even a matter of year-round having possibly 14 kids outside. It would just be the 2 youngest ones. And then you throw in their infants. Infants aren't going to be outside playing, screaming, crying, and I can have 2 infants. So I just hope that you guys take that into consideration. Thank you.
Thank you. Any comments, questions from council? Mr. Wilson?
Does her neighbor have kids?
I'm not sure. Do you have children?
Yes, I have 2 children, 12 years old and 8 years old.
What do they do when you're sleeping?
What do they do when I'm sleeping?
Yes.
they have grown up with a dad in law enforcement, so they have learned to have to play in different areas of the house to try to give dad a chance to get some sleep for the next shift. And they've grown up through the parenting process of that.
I worked nights for 20-plus years.
You understand that challenge, isn't it?
I never had a problem though with kids.
Neither. Scott?
Do you have you had any issues with being able to hear the children that are there currently while you're sleeping during the day?
Well, I'm working a day shift right now. My schedule changes
Right.
from year to year based on assignment. Right now, I'm on day shift, and I wouldn't know, because I'm at work during the day. I work today from 7 a.m. till 5 p.m. So-
I was just curious.
No, it's okay, I'm not answering a question.
If nothing else, roll call vote.
Councilmember Smith?
Aye.
Councilmember Duran?
Aye.
Councilmember Mendez?
Aye.
Councilmember Dykeman?
Aye.
Councilmember Brashears?
No.
Councilmember Jones?
No.
Councilmember Wilson?
Aye.
Councilmember Self?
Aye.
Motion carries 6-2. Have no new business, so on to other business, resolution number 17-R-49, a resolution of the City Council of the City of Republic, Missouri, authorizing the city administrator to enter into an agreement with Midwest Public Risk for property and liability insurance for fiscal year 2017-2018. Need a motion and a second?
Motion.
Second.
Have a motion and a second, Mr. Cameron?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. As you can see annually, the city goes out and solicits proposals for property and liability insurance. We have Steve Reitman, who's our broker with Arthur J. Gallagher and Company, who oversees this process for us. And Steve is here tonight to present the proposals and the recommendations, so I'm going to turn it over to Steve.
Hey there, I'm Steve Whiteman with Arthur J. Gallagher. Thanks for the opportunity to be here today. So if you have the agenda, or excuse me, my packet in front of you, I created just a quick executive summary in the first part. So this is going to be just a little bit of an overview of what we've done from a marketing process. Really nothing crazy this renewal. So you can see on the second full page of that document, it's going to be the kind of the boring spreadsheet with all the facts and numbers. This is going to be an overview of the city's, first of all, property values, and then expiring premium with Midwest Public Risk, and then the renewal premium with Midwest Public Risk. So just a bit of an overview for those that are not familiar with this. Midwest Public Risk, or MPR, they're an insurance pool. So in addition to providing you with your insurances, so they handle your property and casualty lines. They also offer additional services, legal assistance and whatnot. So you are in a pool with them. They had a rougher year as far as losses go, so there's a flat 5% rate increase for members this year. We did go out to bid with MPR, Midwest Public Risk. You have to give them 90 days to leave the pool, so that's going to be a standard practice amongst pools also if you were to leave. There's usually, I believe with them, there's like a 3-year, you can't come back for 3 years, so that's going to be very standard across pools. So, quite a while ago, we went out to the insurance carriers that had quoted previously, as well as a couple of new ones, and basically what we did, kind of a soft market, we went out to them and said, this is, approximate premiums they're paying. Do you have any interest in, in pursuing the risk? So we got some indications, but none of them really made sense compared to Midwest Public Risk. As much as you got a small increase in the premium this year, there wasn't anything else that they were really willing to bring to the table. So last year, we had several carriers quote, and they were all quite a bit higher from a premium standpoint. That, and I just wanted to do a quick highlight. So page 3 of your document, I apologize for going around the place here. This is just going to be a quick little overview of the insurance carriers that we spoke with this year. And then on the bottom is going to be that deductible comparison. So in addition to, good coverage, typically it's going to be less, there's going to be less ebbs and flows in an insurance pool than in the market, even though it's a pretty soft market right now. You'll be able to see they can offer cities some additional services, so that would be, legal assistance and claims help and things of the like, but also the deductibles. So last year, that's one thing I failed to do when we presented we presented the changes in the deductibles, but I didn't go over line for line for y'all. So what NPR can do is provide you with a lower deductible schedule than most carriers. So you can see the standard market, and this is in reference to the bottom right sheet there. So you can see what your current deductible is with NPR, and then of course what the standard marketplace is. You can go lower, but they usually don't throw that in, so there would be an increase in premium. And most of the folks, actually for a city this size, they're not interested in really doing much lower than a standard $5,000 deductible for property, $25,000 for the public officials and things. So the rest of the packet is just going to be a quick little snapshot of your current, program, just kind of line by line. I just wanted to break that out just in case, in the future, especially if you had any questions, you could reference this packet. But any questions of me at this point? Yes, sir.
So can you tell us, let's say tornado hits town,
Yes.
wipes out Walmart, and we have, we rely on sales tax from Walmart. What does NPR do as far as?
From a sales tax, so that's an interesting one. You have what's called, you may be quite familiar with this, but you have the ability, NPR will kick in some funds for business interruption. So if you were to lose a facility and you needed to, let's just say this building, for example, due to either flooding, which happened to another client of mine not too long ago. So, City Hall gets flooded and you all need to use another facility. You do have coverage for that. For the loss of, I'm sorry?
Dependent?
Yes, but on the loss of taxable income, that's not something that they will have. We actually just created a program, Gallagher, that will allow you to purchase coverage for that. So it's normally geared towards those if like you have an amusement park or something that's if you've got one or two just real high players from a tax income standpoint, there is the ability to do that. So if you had an airport or amusement park, something like that, but that's something I can get a quote for you really quickly.
I would be interested in looking at different deductibles and more, and adding on something like that for us.
Yeah, absolutely. That's something I can do. I'm very good friends with the person who created that for us, so get something to you real quickly.
Any other questions, comments? Mr. Jones?
What's inland marine?
That's going to be your contents, so desks, chairs, things like that. Insurance is screwy with our verbiage, and inland marine just means, it has nothing to do with boats, like I thought. Yep, there you go. Not boats on land.
I thought I'd ask the stupid.
Absolutely.
There was actually a charter for boats and it was left blank. Oh, okay. Yeah, because I had the same question. I was like, yeah, but inland marine.
Yeah.
No boats. Anything else? Either for Mr. Weidman or for Mr. Cameron? Thank you, sir.
Oh, thank you all.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Any abstentions? Motion carries 8-0. Resolution number 17-R-50. A resolution of the City Council of the City of Republic, Missouri, authorizing the execution of an equipment rental agreement with Murphy Tractor and Equipment. Need a motion and a second.
Motion. Second.
I have a motion and a second. Mr. Brock.
Thank you, Mayor. Our department maintains 3 backhoes, 2 owned outright, and since 2011, we've rented a backhoe from Murphy Tractor. It's a little bigger unit than our own backhoes. This resolution would extend that rental agreement with Murphy Tractor for a 2-year term at a rate of $1,000 per month. This is a budgeted item that we have included for 2017, and would anticipate, if approved, doing so as well in 2018.
Any questions, Mr. Smith?
I noticed on the hours, they limit us to 8 hours per day, 40 hours per week, 176 hours in 1 month. Is there anything in there? So if, say, a tornado comes through and wipes out the town, we got 3 backhoes running nonstop for a month. Is there an emergency clause in there or anything?
There are over-hour rates. I can get that information for you.
Would there be a chance that we would go over that normally?
It is not. We've not bumped over that in normal usage, but the potential is there, as you mentioned, for some sort of out-of-the-ordinary circumstance.
Anything else for Mr. Brock? Nothing else? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Any abstentions? Motion carries 8-0. Resolution number 17-R-51, a resolution of the City Council of the City of Republic, Missouri, accepting the bidding process and cooperative purchasing terms between Insuform Technologies USA, LLC, and the City of Independence, Missouri, and authorizing the city administrator to execute a contractor agreement for the rehabilitation of sanitary sewer infrastructure. Need a motion and a second?
Motion. Second.
Have a motion and a second, Mr. Brock?
Thank you, sir. This is very similar to agenda item at your last meeting. It's deals with the rehabilitation of our sanitary sewer system. In this case, the contractor is Insuform Technologies, and we are wanting to utilize the cooperative purchasing terms with the City of Independence. The work contemplated under this contract is slip lining. It's a rehabilitation of sewer pipe, and specifically clay tile pipe in the older parts of town. The value of the contract is estimated at $116,588. Our total budget for I&I work this year was $150,000, and this nudges us up to about $6,000 within that top amount. We do like to leave just a little bit in there. It's unit pricing, and so there can be some variation between our initial estimates and measured and installed and accepted cost. So this resolution would authorize that contract with the work to be performed in 2017.
Questions, comments?
Mr. Mayor.
Mr. Dyke?
Question on, is I see the area you're talking about, if this would be done in, are there not any, I'm sure it doesn't cover the whole city to do it. How did we come about choosing that area?
Show you a map. The yellow lines you see there are the specific locations. We tend to work in neighborhoods. The downtown area has a lot of the clay pipe. We've worked through a number of quadrants, so to speak, and it's based on our maintenance records. What are we finding when we're out there cleaning pipe? We're finding lots of evidence of roots. Do you see evidence of infiltration during rain events in those manholes? So it's a determination made by our maintenance staff.
Is there is this something you do once a year, or how do you?
We include an annual amount in our budget, and so typically it's between $130,000 and $150,000. Wish I had $1 million a year to do, but it's one of those things that you just keep chipping away at year after year.
If something going interior of the pipe, does that reduce the flow amount?
It does slightly. The slip lining, the thickness is a little more than a quarter inch, so you do lose some capacity, but it provides a little structural support in that clay tile pipe. And the primary feature is to reduce the amount of water that can get in or get out, so to speak. But it does help on the structural side as well.
Any other questions, comments, or concerns for Mr. Brown? Mr. Selk?
Is this, in the day of us spending money and watching our P's and Q's here, like as far as the, how much we spend, is there like a cost benefit to this as far as, like if we don't do it, we could be looking at something larger down the road, or like, has there been any type of analysis of if we spend this here, could we spend this much money somewhere else?
We've done some detailed studies here on the amount of inflow we have. The balancing subjects here are what capacity do you have to plant, and how much would it cost you to add capacity versus reducing the amount of flow that's traveling out to the plant. And industry-wide, it's recognized that dollar for dollar, you're better reducing your I&I as opposed to purchasing additional capacity. So the benefit, I suppose, is that we're going to increase the lifetime of our existing plant. We'll make some space available for new development out there, and So I hope that addressed your question.
Mr. Mayor?
Peggy, go ahead.
I know that clay pipe is really fragile, or it can be the older it gets, right? So how much structure would that sleeve give it? I mean, what?
Part of the process that they will do is they'll go in and put a closed-circuit TV camera in there. So this would not be used where you have severe structural deficiencies or an actual structural breakdown. Those we would simply mark and come back and dig up and repair. So for the primary issue here, a lot of times the clay tile pipe, very poor joints. You get a lot of I&I around the joints, you get a lot of flow in around the service connections. And for minor cracking, this is the preferred method. But if it's really structurally deficient, then you need to go in and do an old-fashioned repair.
Thank you.
Additional question, you say once, if they get the contract, then they'll do that. If they do come up and say that half of the line needed to be replaced, then what's that do to the contract?
It's unit price, so we only pay for what's installed. So if they leave out a section or run between manholes, the footage is reduced and the cost per foot then is not billed.
We talked about some escaping or getting in, right? So either
Yes.
way, with this, forgive me for my ignorance in this, but what will this eliminate? I mean, what are we talking about? How many gallons that get in, get out? What's the elimination?
It's hard to boil that down to specifics. I can tell you our flow increases almost 300% and more in certain portions of town, particularly older portions of town. That's what we're trying to chip away at.
One quick question.
Mr. Wilson, sorry.
Tell them how long you've been doing this.
This is an annual event. Certainly during my tenure, and I'm sure back into the mid-'90s.
So it's been going on for a long time.
Is this the right approach? I mean, are we chipping away at it effectively, or is this what other cities do?
It is, and I mean, we take a mixed approach. The last contract was for smoke testing to try to determine in a different location where the big faults are, and then also manhole rehabilitation, manhole patching. So multiple pronged approach to the different aspects. The area that we need to expand to get into is piping on the private side. I would say some areas of town that we've probably got some of the sub-basins, we were probably close to 60 or 70%. All the pipe has been relined. The remaining inflow and infiltration then is coming from piping on the private side. So that's one of the benefits of the smoke testing. It starts to reveal those defects and allows you to go in and work with owners to get those repaired as well.
Anything else from council?
Mr. Mayor?
Mr. Cameron?
So, I do have a question then, back to your question, Mr. Wilson. So I guess the question would be, given all the years of putting this in, and back to Jason's question, how much impact has it made on reducing the amount of, because we're running 11 million gallons during the rain event through this collection system. And what has the reduction been if all those years of, if doing that for improving it, I guess that would be a good question is, to Jason's, are we actually getting there? And if we're not, what is the action plan? So that'd be the question to ask or to answer, or is it actually working with all the money that's been spent?
Correct, and I think we'd have to do a pretty detailed analysis to do that. We're kind of fighting on two fronts. The amount of growth that we've had, it's not something that you can see on a daily or monthly basis because we continue to add new customers. That drives up your average daily flow. But I think it could be done. Certainly, we've got some dry weather flow records from each year. We could go back and look at that data.
Well, I think having that in mind, and based on the fact that it's $116,000, I just want to make sure that we have the right. There's been a lot of questions from council, and maybe could possibly need more research. If it's the council's pleasure, I'd ask to table this item, if we could table this item until the next meeting. But of course, to do that, we need a motion and a second if that's the council's pleasure.
I'll motion to table the item.
Second.
Have a motion and a second. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Any abstentions? Motion carries 8-0. Thank you, Mr. Brock. That was a whole lot of questions. Resolution number 17-R-52, a resolution of the City Council of the City of Republic, Missouri, approving the audit report for the fiscal year ended December 31st, 2016. Have a motion and a second?
Motion?
Second. Have a motion and a second. Ms. Park, or I'm sorry. I didn't look up there before I said that. I apologize.
I'm sorry, I'd like to introduce Mr. John Cummings, our auditor from KPM. They came on staff and they worked very diligently to get you this audit report today. And right now, I'd like to turn it over to our auditor, Mr. John Cummings. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Welcome.
Good evening. Thanks for having me here tonight. My name is John Cummings. I'm a Audit Services shareholder with KPM CPAs out of Springfield. And tonight, we're going to be going over the independent audit report and financial statements for the year ended December 31st, 2016. You should have 2 letters and then a large booklet that is bound. And we're going to start on page 4 of the large bound booklet. I was told I had about an hour and 30 minutes to go through this tonight. And so there's 81 pages. I think I can stretch it. So with that in mind, we'll get going. The independent auditor's report is where we tell you how you did on your financial statements. The purpose of the audit, of course, is to determine whether or not the financial statements are fairly stated in all material respects in accordance with the accounting standards. And so this letter talks about the report on the financial statements, management's responsibility for the financial statements, and the auditor's responsibility for the audit and the financial statements as well, and conducting our audit in accordance with the standards. On the next page is the most important paragraph, and that is the opinions paragraph. It's where we give our opinion on your financial statements. And in our opinion, the financial statements referred to in this report present fairly in all material respects the respective financial position of the governmental activities, the business type activities, and each major fund of the City of Republic as of December 31, 2016. That is a clean or unmodified opinion. That is the best possible result, and the one, trust me, that you want. The others are bigger headaches. So as I go through this, if you have questions, feel free to stop me. I'm going to kind of cruise through some numbers pretty quickly here because I think that you guys are well informed on those. We'll turn over to page 18 and take a look at the balance sheet for your governmental funds. And while you're turning there, I'll tell you a little bit about your governmental funds. Last year, you guys had a general fund, a street maintenance fund, and a parks fund, and that was all on the governmental fund front. During this particular year, you've expanded out to have a general fund, a street fund, a stormwater improvement fund, a fire sales tax fund, a parks and recreation fund, and a special project fund. Basically, that's splitting out existing funds that you had. And beginning balances were restated to establish those funds. The reason why they were split out was because most of them are driven by a particular special sales tax. So you had a street sales tax, stormwater sales tax, fire sales tax, as well as a park sales tax. So all of those needed to be tracked separately so that you could accurately account for the funds that were being used from those taxes and make sure that they were being spent in accordance with what the ballot language actually dictated. And so that results in a minor bit of fallout here in this particular presentation because the comparability, when you look at last year's audit to this year's, there's not going to be a whole lot of comparability unless you start combining things in this audit. So I tried to do that a bit as I went through and put my notes together for tonight. I will keep it pretty high level because in reality, I think I have about 20 minutes. So in total, the governmental funds had total assets of $8,226,302. That is up $509,000 compared to last year. So that's always good. When assets are going up, that's a great thing. On the liabilities front, you had $397,938 in total liabilities across all your governmental funds. Those are down $204,000 compared to last year. And that's a good thing. Liabilities are going down. Now, last year, there was a small difference in how your compensated absences were presented. Compensated absences would be the amount that's due to employees if they were to quit or be fired at some point out in the future. And that'd be accumulated sick leave and vacation leave, essentially. So those items were picked up last year as current liabilities. Well, the current liability is one that you are expecting to pay in the next 1 year period. And I'm pretty sure those didn't get paid out during this particular 1 year period, so they're not really current liabilities. Under the accounting standards, they should have been picked up as a long-term liability. Long-term liabilities aren't presented in a governmental fund. They're only presented for governmental funds on the government-wide financial statements under GASB 34. And I probably just lost you all. So GASB 34, going back, was in 2004, I think. It's a long time ago for me. We're on GASB 83 right now, so this is far back. But they established that city governments, municipalities, all governments needed to present their financial statements in a more business-like manner. And to do that, they present business-type activities and governmental activities. And those financial statements are in here. You'll see them. There's reconciliations between your fund financial statements and those financial statements. And basically, the reconciliation is putting in capital assets, accumulated depreciation, and long-term debt. So that's the difference between a government-wide financial statement under GASB 34 and the fund financial statements, which are how you budget. So, is that clear as mud, hopefully? Okay, good. So, back to this. How does it all stack up to last year? Well, your general fund last year included the fire sales tax fund, and total assets there last year were about $221,000. Actually, sorry, I misspoke there. Reading my handwriting is a little bit fun after the fact. Okay, so you had in the general fund total assets of $4,205,325, and you in the fire sales tax fund had $389,477. And so what that really means is that you're actually up for the year by about $110,000 if you combine them and compare to last year in total assets. That's a cleaner way to say that. On liabilities, your general fund liabilities are down $172,000 at $197,668. And if you flip the page and look at the fund balances and deferred taxes, the fund balance number is critical because that's where you end the year at. In the general fund, you had total fund balance of $3,982,210. That's down $117,000 compared to last year. And this does kind of factor in the restatements that were done to start the year. The street fund is down $139,000 compared to last year at $1,398,903. The stormwater improvement fund is up $365,000 compared to last year after the restatement at $951,592. Fire sales tax fund had $389,477. That's up $168,000 compared to last year. And the Parks and Recreation Fund ended at $1,069,971, which is up $151,000. So you had total fund balance of $7,792,153, which is up $429,000 compared to last year. So overall, I would say the city was having a pretty good year in 16. So that wasn't the case in all cities. I go to a lot of cities, for those of you that don't know. I've been doing auditing of governments for now 17 years, and we audit about 43 municipalities. So that doesn't count school districts and special districts and other stuff. So we see a lot of these, and we can obviously spot a city that's growing and moving forward when we see one. So, any questions on your governmental funds balance sheet? If not, we'll flip over to page 21, look at the revenues and expenditures for those same funds. Talk about it in totals here, because sake of time. If you have questions about something specific, I'll be happy to answer it. Total governmental fund revenue for the year was $11,004,706. That's up $606,000 compared to last year. Total expenditures for all governmental funds were $11,092,893. That's up $1.6 million compared to last year. And on the next page, in the total column, you'll see that you had other financing sources and uses of funds. There was lease proceeds of $84,525, sale of assets for $233,778, and then operating transfers in and out, and brought to a total of an increase in the financing sources of $516,699. You had a gain for the year of $428,512, and ended the year with total fund balance in all governmental funds of $7,792,153. So, reinforcing my point that you guys did have a pretty good year in your governmental funds. Any questions on those? You guys are a quiet bunch all of a sudden. If not, we'll flip over to page 24 and take a look at the utility fund. Kind of the same exercise here. Total assets were $29,490,150. That's up about $406,000 compared to last year. The breakdown of that is that the current assets were only up about, or actually they were down about $1,000 at $1,363,562. The total restricted assets were up $571,000 compared to last year at $4,908,758. And your total property, plant, and equipment was $23,217,830, which is down about $164,000 compared to last year. Bulk of that, of course, is depreciation expense over what you actually spent in capital. On the next page is the liabilities. Oh wait, there's one more thing I wanted to mention. I skipped over an important part right at the bottom because it's new. The deferred outflows of resources on page 24, $221,113. It's a non-asset or non-liability. Under a recent GASB standard, 68 and 67, there are some new accounting classes, so to speak. Used to assets, liabilities, and equity, right? Well, now we have deferred inflows and deferred outflows. And this is where your pension-related things fall. They're really not an asset, they're really not a liability, they don't really fit in a clean bucket. So they're just deferred items. And this particular one's interesting in that it's set by GASB 68, which dictates how you record your pension or your loggers plan. And this thing was $221,113. That's up $189,000 compared to last year. That is entirely on the strength of a change in assumption by the actuaries at loggers. It's a number that's completely out of your control. So I wanted to point that out because whenever you see that number, you go, where in the world did that come from? Well, that came from loggers. And basically, the first year they put out their reports after GASB 68, they had one set of assumptions, and then they've revised those assumptions now. And everything looks a lot different. So I wanted to point that out in case anybody was curious. The next page, page 25, shows the liabilities, deferred inflows, and the net position of the utility fund. Total liabilities for the utility fund were $12,578,127. That is down $744,000 compared to last year. Your current liabilities were up $695,000 at $2,180,524, but the long-term liabilities were down $1.4 million at $10,397,603. You had a deferred pension inflow of $24,275. That's down $4,000 compared to last year. Your net position was $17,108,861, which is up $1,565,328. Yes?
Question, I'm sorry to bounce back here, but page 22, the operating transfers of in and out, that has nothing to do with revenues or expenditures. That is totally separate. Any of the changes that were made has no bearing on. Basically, though, our sales versus our expenses were higher than our sales. If you look at it as a cost to do business versus revenue? We were at a deficit of 88,000, correct? Okay. I just want to make sure of that. All right.
Yeah, overall, the general funds needed an extra $516,699 to get to that gain of $428,000.
Okay.
I think that's what you're asking.
Yeah. Okay.
Took me a minute to process there. Okay. So back to page 25. I think we just talked about the increase of $1,565,328 to get to the net position of $17,108,861. So the utility funds actually had a pretty good year as well. Any questions on those pages?
What was the reason for the biggest change in the long-term liabilities?
It's the timing of the debt payments primarily, because what went up there was the current maturities of long-term debt. So what's coming up for 17, which you've already really planned for, and it's sitting there in the payment schedules, money gets paid into a trust. It's sitting there most likely at this point. So it's already factored in. Okay, on 26 is the statement of revenues, expenses, and changes in net position for this fund. Total operating revenues were $4,999,093. That's up about $323,000 compared to last year. Operating expenses were $3,173,722. That's down about $367,000 compared to last year. You got operating income of $1.8 million. There were non-operating items of a net expense of $61,647 and a transfer out of $198,396. And net income was $1,565,328, and that left a net position of $17,108,861. You'll notice that up in the operating expenses section, we've got the water services and the sewer services broken out. That's the first step toward actually splitting these two utilities into their own independent funds, which I think is going to happen next year, if I'm not mistaken.
That is correct.
So next year you'll see two utility funds, one for water, one for sewer, and that way each of them can be tracked independently and make sure that one's not subsidizing the other. So that is the game plan on that. Any questions on the financials? Not, we'll turn over to page 79 and look at the schedule of findings and responses. The things that you just are flipping past as you flip toward page 79 are the notes to the financial statements, and then also the budget to actual statements for each governmental fund. And the detail as to what taxes are included in that tax number on the financial statements I went over, there's a lot more detail in your budget to actual statements if you really are just looking for something in more detail. But just kind of a heads up that that's there for you if you need it. Okay, so material weaknesses. That sounds bad, doesn't it? It's really not so bad because I think that the crew that you have is going to be very proactive in correcting literally everything here. So not overly concerned about it at this point. The first item is 2016-001, segregation of duties. And this is a very common recommendation or finding that we have at almost every municipality. The reason being is that you have a limited number of personnel available to complete the accounting transactions of the city and also carry out controls over those financial accounting transactions, which means that more than one phase of the accounting cycle falls to one person's responsibility. Ideally, one person would take care of one phase of the accounting cycle, and then somebody else would take care of the next one, and somebody the next one. The problem is that the resources of the city really can't be tied up in that way. And that's very common in municipalities of this size and 3 times this size. There's just not the resources there that are going to be committed to that particular item. So this is a very common recommendation. What it really means for you is that you need to take the controls that you have very seriously. So if you're involved in being one of the multiple signatures on checks, really look at the check. Don't just sign away. If you notice that somebody's not taking control seriously, say, hey, you need to do that. What it really means is be vigilant. So you do have a situation where a person could actually take advantage of the city because of their job function. And that's really what this says. And so it's important that the controls be taken very seriously, that you do have, because you do have some mitigating controls. And again, this is very common, but it is a recommendation that you do the best you can with what you got, which means being vigilant and being very sincere in carrying out the controls that you do have. Item 2016-002 is bank statement review. And right now, the city doesn't have a policy that requires a review of bank statements by an employee outside of the person that's actually doing the bank reconciliations. It's a good practice to have the bank statements come in and be opened and looked through by somebody other than that person. And so we'd recommend you have a policy like that that gives, well, it kind of takes away, actually, the opportunity of the person doing the bank rec to pull out or alter some part of the statement and give somebody else extra eyes onto it. And if there's a problem, then it's most likely to be actually detected at that point. In the days of image checks and that sort of thing, it's not quite as big a deal as when you actually got the canceled checks back, but it still is important. Some FBI guy that was at a conference I was at said, this is going to sound harsh, but trust is not an internal control. And it is very true. We all like to have warm, fuzzy feelings about everybody that we work with and everybody that works for us and all of that, but in reality, life's life and people are people. And internal controls exist to keep honest people honest. And trust doesn't do that. Internal controls do. 2016-003 on the next page is bank reconciliation review. Kind of goes hand in hand with the last one in that the city doesn't currently have a policy that requires a review of the bank account reconciliations by somebody outside the accounting cycle. Giving somebody outside the accounting cycle the responsibility of checking over the bank rec does several things for the city. It creates another set of eyes on it, make sure it's done timely, make sure it's done correctly. If your bank reconciliation doesn't get done in a timely or a correct manner, then you have an increased risk of something going wrong for the city, and I don't think anybody really wants that. So kind of a side benefit is that extra person being familiar with the bank reconciliation process. The person that's doing the bank rec could go to them and say, I'm stuck, I don't know what I've missed here, can you look at it and tell me what I'm missing, when it doesn't actually work out. Because believe me, bank recs don't always work out, and it's human error most of the time. Cleared a check that shouldn't have been cleared or something like that. So having somebody that's familiar with the process gives the person doing the bank rec kind of a safety net, somebody they can go to and get a little bit of help if they need it. So there's that one. Number 4 is reconciliation of the utility accounts receivable to the ledger. We did have some adjustments to utilities receivable. And so basically what we found was that there's not reconciliations happening between the utility billing system and the accounts, the general ledger accounting system. So there's a pretty simple report that can be run out of Summit, and I've talked to Debbie about it, and I think she's going to be doing that. And basically, that thing it actually does a really good job of tracking what you billed, what was collected, and what your accounts receivable should be in the ledger at any moment. And so that should all work out, and I think you're going to be fine next year on that one. So hopefully a lot of these can be commends next year. Okay. Any questions on those internal control items? How am I doing on time? Bad?
You're doing good, man.
Okay. Last thing, there were 2 letters that I mentioned. They're stapled letters. They were outside of the bound booklet. The one that starts with overtime rules is a recommendation letter. It's more about just kind of for your information or heads up or whatever you want to call it kind of things. The other letter is a letter from us auditors to those of you charged with governance, and it's a required communication according to the standards. And it talks about disagreements with management, and spoiler alert, there weren't any. and talks about other key aspects of the audit as required under the standards. So I would encourage you to read that sometime close to when you want to fall asleep, because it is kind of boring. On the letter that deals with overtime rules, that's what we call a management recommendation letter. And on the item of overtime rules, we have that on there because there is some court action. Right now, everything's on hold relating to changing who is and who isn't eligible for overtime pay. And the last administration had one set of goals on that. I think the new administration might have some different goals. My guess is that the current administration wouldn't be pursuing anything in the court to push this overtime change through. I could be wrong on that. So stay tuned and be paying attention to any news that comes up on that front. That's pretty much the recommendation. Item 2 deals with electronic information safeguards, and it discusses things like ransomware, viruses, malware. For those of you that haven't been paying attention, all of that stuff is on the rise, and municipalities are going to be a big target because you have an awful lot of personally identifiable information. And you want to be sure that you're doing everything you can as a city to protect that information, and also to avoid the headache that a breach or a ransomware attack or something like that will cause. And that goes to things like making sure that each individual machine isn't running on a daily basis with administrative rights, making sure all your patches are getting done on the machines and the networks, educating the staff on the warning signs, what kind of emails look sketchy, where might there be a risk, that kind of thing. Maybe even designating a person to monitor and distribute warnings about what is current or new threats. It's a good policy. In our company, we have a guy that he'll send out an email. Be watching for this kind of thing. If you get a Word document and an email, call the person and talk to them and make sure they actually sent it to you before you open it. Because right now, that's a big thing. Now, he could get into all the technical stuff, but I'm an accountant, not an IT guy, so I'm not going to try that. What I would recommend, though, is that you work with your IT people and make sure that the network of the city is being protected like you think it is. Next item is wire transfer schemes. This kind of goes hand in hand with what I talked about in the last one, which is more cyber-related security things. The criminal element has gotten quite creative and patient, surprisingly, on how they carry out various attacks on various kinds of entities. And one thing that can happen is that a piece of malware can get onto a person's computer in a key position. They will figure out all the players in City Hall, for instance, and just document. Look at schedules, when are they normally here, when are they gone, when they have a big meeting coming up, they just monitor. And then at an opportune time, they'll send an email, say from David's email account, to Debbie and say, I'm trying to finish up this deal, I need you to transfer $15,000 from this account to over here on this account. And we got to get it done. And that email will come at such a time that you can pull it off with your bank's wire policies from a time aspect, but it'll be really close to the cutoff for the day. So there'll be a little bit of a hurry. And if she goes through it, it could be a problem. I know of a case pretty close to here where that very thing happened. The executive director appeared to have sent an email to a person, said, send $15,000 to this account so I can finish off this deal. The person did what they were supposed to do according to their boss, and when the boss came back in, he said, aren't you happy I was able to get you that wire transfer? I mean, we cut it close, but we got it in. The exec director went, what? What transfer? And the staff person who had managed to make the transfer fell sick. Because basically what happened was, right at the cutoff, they got the $15,000 transfer done, it hit wherever it went, the person pulled the money out, and it's gone. So, the telephone is your friend. is the real meat and potatoes of this particular recommendation. If you get something that seems weird in an email, something that seems out of course or makes you want to hurry, get on the phone and actually talk to the person that's involved in the other side of it, in that communication. Item 4 is a periodic internal control review recommendation, and it doesn't hurt in the average and normal course of business to take a look at the internal controls that you have periodically and make sure that they're working in an efficient and effective manner. Are they designed properly? Are they functioning like they should? It is even more important when you have turnover in key positions. It's the time to do it because you have fresh eyes on an entire situation. You got new people. That's the time to go ahead and work out the kinks in the internal controls, make sure everything's working like you think it is. And so we would encourage you to be paying attention to that here. The last and certainly not least is the communication of ethical practices. And it's important to remind staff that it is critical to the city's success that city employees behave in an ethical manner on and off the clock. And that doesn't go to just the people that work in this building, it's everywhere. Because sometimes employees do forget that behaving in an ethical manner is important. And so the city has a certain reputation it wants to have, and one employee can mess that up for everybody. And so it is critical that things like internal controls, actions out in the community, all of that stuff be taken into account and considered when making choices on a daily basis. It doesn't just apply to the accounting stuff, it kind of goes to a general overall tone in the city. If I go into a place and I don't feel like there's integrity and ethical behavior, I'm out of that place. I don't want to work with those people. And I certainly wouldn't want to live in a town that was that way. And everybody's kind of sitting there looking at me like, oh Lord, what's he about to say? But what I would say is that this was the first year we've done this audit, and I encountered some different reactions to the audit than I was anticipating. New audits are always fun. The first year is a bigger headache. It's a lot of getting to know each other, learning processes and procedures, and getting to know each other a bit. And what I found was there was an eagerness to improve by all people that we were talking to during the audit, and eagerness to embrace change. And so that was very refreshing for me as an auditor, because people generally don't like to change. And so that was an interesting dynamic to run into. The other thing that struck me during the audit was Debbie. We walked in to do the audit, and she hadn't walked in much before us. And what we usually get in that scenario is, oh, that happened before I was here. I don't know. You'll have to ask so-and-so, or I just don't know. Not with her. Everything we ask for, I don't really know, but I'll find out. And in a very remarkable amount of time, she found out. So I want to thank her specifically for doing that, because a first-year audit's tough enough. It's even worse if you're not getting cooperation. And we couldn't have asked for more help. And it was a very, very smooth process for a first-year audit. And it was because she really dug in and found what we needed. And, if you walked through here during the audit, it was apparent there was something going on, because there was computers and piles of paper and all kinds of stuff going on, and it probably was a mess, and for that I apologize, but that was the look of progress going on. So with that, I also want to thank you all for allowing me to present tonight, and if you have questions later or tonight or whatever, feel free to get in touch with me. Debbie's got my cell phone number, email, office phone. I'm easy to get a hold of, so feel free to make use of us. If you have questions, want to bounce something off of us, we're here for you. So.
Are there any questions for Mr. Cummings or Mrs. Parks? Council? And it's been a little bit, so I want to remind everybody that the motion and the second we have for the resolution of the City Council of the City of Republic, Missouri approving the audit report for the fiscal year ending December 31st, 2016. We have a motion and a second. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Any abstentions? Motion carries 8-0. Thank you very much. On to the finance report. Finance followed by finance.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor and Council. I'm not going to bore you tonight with a bunch of numbers since we heard a lot of really impressive numbers a few minutes ago. But I just wanted to give a quick follow-up. I wanted to thank the auditor for making it easy coming in as a new finance director. I took it as a learning tool, and so I appreciate you listening and entertaining my questions along the way. Also, I just wanted to give a quick follow-up response to the audit so that council will know. During the audit process, the auditors brought up some concerns, just suggestions. They didn't make it quite to the material weakness list on your audit report, but it's standard during an audit for them to bring up issues that they might, just suggestions along the way. Included in that was working on internal controls. So I took that very serious. So coming in, me and all my staff, we started working immediately on evaluating what was going on, what we needed to work on to improve things. Just to give you a real quick brief rundown, I held an internal control workshop for our supervisors in which we discussed the changes that were coming and suggestions for making our cash management side of the city work better. We started counting down deposits. That was done randomly, but not always on a consistent basis in the city. So when the Parks Department brings over their deposits, when the court brings over their deposits, you'll see us daily. Some of you council members have seen us actually in the counting down process to making sure that when they bring it over, we both initial, and that's what's taken to the bank for the deposit. Locking safes was also an issue in the city, so those are now locked down all the time, and the cash drawers are always locked. And it's just a matter of making sure that controls that maybe along the way had been in place, maybe with turnover had some of them gone lapse, but we're working on that. We're still evaluating more ways where we can improve the internal controls. He brought up the cross-training priority inside your letter, which was a suggestion, and we felt this really firmly in our department when we lost our finance officer, since we didn't quite know all the procedures of everything was doing. So everyone is working on manuals, so there will not be a single person in my finance department or the utility billing where there's not a complete manual. If there is a turnover for some reason, we will now know how to do that job function, and then people will actually be cross-training. Another issue that he brought up was what is standard in most cities, which is the small staff size. Well, we can't really cure that. I have evaluated the accounts payable, the finance officer, and the finance director positions, including what available staff we have in utility billing, and there are some things that we can shift from different responsibilities so that we don't have one person counting down the deposits, taking it to the bank, entering in the queue. There's just some minor tweaks that we're making to make sure there's a little bit more segregation between the different positions. So I just wanted to give you an update. And we're also looking at other processes in the accounting functions. And it's a progress, it's a work. It's coming along. And I've been here 3 months, but by the end of the year, I'm hoping that we'll have evaluated a lot more and improved a little bit more functions. Basically, we've completed the audit. It will need to be filed by June 30th with the state. And we're also working on filing it's called an EMMA report. It's for our bond. Our bonds, we do a report to the IRS on our financial states. In addition, we've begun the 5-year capital asset plan. We will be doing presentations beginning at the June meeting of the Capital Improvement Committee to start that process. And most of you are aware that goes hand in hand with the budgeting process. We are hoping to start the budget process in July and August to be right on schedule to bring it to council with the goal of approval in November. One last little bit of information on the staffing side. I'm happy to report we have hired a finance officer, so we will not be short much longer. She starts on June 28th. Her name is Megan Payne, and she's coming from Greene County's Sheriff Department. She's worked on budgets and most of the functions that she'll be working with here, so I'm very excited about that. Most of you are aware, we had a little accounting glitch this last week. We lost a day and a half worth of data. And then on top of it, I had a little computer malfunction, so I apologize that the financial report was not sent out with the rest of the agenda. But I hope you've had a chance to look at it when it was sent out yesterday afternoon. And for those of you, it should have been handed out today. Basically, I know we were talking about the RFP for the new financial software. I'm happy to report that we have mailed it out, and responses are due to us on July 7th. But when we were discussing the initial approval process for accounting software, someone had brought up, what is the true cost of time lost? So I took this opportunity last week when our accounting system went down and we lost a day and a half of data to calculate the salaries of everybody for the day and a half that we had to recreate it in my department and the court department, because they also lost all their data from the court that day, and it was $1,900 if we had been paid, you know. So that was the loss of recreating that data. That would pay for almost 3 HP computers. So that's the comparison. Last but not least, inside your financial report, you'll see the standard sales tax numbers that came in. We have several new businesses coming to town. It looks like Aldi's, which opened last Thursday, is really moving. So I'm really optimistic with the sales tax numbers coming in for the rest of the year. Comparing it to last year, we're still ahead of where we were last year. The current month data, the May receipts, the receipts that were just deposited in June, we're down a little bit lower than the receipts from 2016 in June, but I think the still overall trend for the year is we're a little bit higher than last year. I didn't have a chance to finish the graphs for the budget to actual figures, but I will just touch base quickly on the general fund because I know that's more of the concern of everybody. The other funds seem to be pretty healthy right now, but we are at 43% for expenditures in our general fund. For comparison, where we should be, the month of May, because these are May figures, is 42%. Is where we should be at. So we're tracking right along of where we should be for the city on our expenditures. One last thing I'll just mention is another thing brought up with the audit is doing a budget amendment. As you're aware, we brought the budget amendment 2 meetings ago to council for approval. We'll be bringing another budget amendment in July, and that will capture this, the difficulty we had with the sewage pump, those expenses, and also the fire truck, which we just signed the lease. The first lease payment will be in December, and it might have some other minor expenditures that we are aware of that are coming up that were not budgeted originally. So, all right, does anyone have any questions? Oops. Yeah.
What happened with the Summit software that caused us to lose a day and a half of work?
Yeah, we're not quite sure. Summit still is trying to work on figuring out what happened, but it initially started, I came in and worked late because I've been having trouble with my computer. So I came in at 6:30 and worked till 8:30 on Wednesday night, maybe Tuesday night. I was not aware that it takes 4 or 5 hours for all the data to upload. So when I came in and started working, it stopped the update. So then they reran the update in the morning, and I don't know if maybe because other people were working at that time, something went wrong, and the interface with Summit, and I believe it's Plug and Pay, the Parks and Rec, and also the utility billing interface computer, something went wrong and they were not able to find what was wrong, so they had to do a hard restore, which means they did a hard restore back to 5 o'clock on Tuesday night, meaning we lost everything.
Okay.
So,
that makes sense. Thank you.
Yeah.
Is the bank statement reconciliation, is that something that you guys are working on? Also, is having another set of eyes looking at that?
Yeah, actually, I haven't had a chance to talk to David, but I do have an idea for someone to look at it on an external site, so I will be talking to him to put into place who that individual will be, but I'll have someone completely outside of the finance department, because I think that's wise after talking to auditors. And at our other organization where I used to work, we had that, and it's more of an internal control on the finance department, so that we know someone outside of us is looking at it, but I will be meeting with the city administrator and we'll determine who that person is. Immediately after the audit, I did start having, we don't have an actual mailed statement come to us, but we print up one, and as soon as it is delivered electronically, I've been having someone in the utility billing department going through just to see if anything looks a little crazy in the initial review. So, and I'm still evaluating, once we get our finance officer in place and other staff positions, it'll probably be part of that discussion with the city administrator.
Thank you.
So, thank you.
Anyone else?
I just want to say great progress. Thank you to KPM. This is good to see, and just looking forward to hearing how those controls roll out and the progress you guys make. I think that'll be exciting to hear as those come in. So thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Need a motion and a second to approve the financial report?
Motion.
Second.
A motion and a second. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Any abstentions? Motion carries 8-0. Reports from staff. Mr. Cameron?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. John and Debbie, I'll tell you, I think you've done an outstanding job on the audit. I know you did. But as we met, I'm trying to recall, we were in my office for 3 or 4 hours. And so I'm one of those that do enjoy the audit, because I want to figure out, trust is not something, it's not an emotion, it's not something that you can sit there and, can use as an internal control. I love that statement. So I enjoy the audit. I enjoy the fact that when we go looking for things. We did have to separate some things with another audit earlier this year. I was anticipating things. But I specifically asked, I want to talk about the weaknesses, because those are the areas where we can improve. It's not the sky's falling, but it's where you start working on and addressing. It's very transparent. It's very out in the open. That's what I like for us to see. Debbie, what you both did and what you've done in the last 2 weeks is nothing short of extraordinary to even get it ready for tonight. And the work you've done in 3 months is outstanding, and we made the right choice. You've done a great job, and I appreciate the work. I appreciate the comments for her work and the staff's cooperation in the project. But job well done. I enjoyed all the discussions we had and all the questions I had of how do we make it better, what do we need to do, and we are working on those things. Debbie, I will tell you this, there will be some stuff that we need to bring to you that we are working on, that Debbie's brought recommendations and ideas that do not necessarily increase costs. It maximizes the use of different positions. So like we have a part-time accounts payable position with the transition to a new finance officer with Debbie. We could actually bring that position onto a full-time position and not increase the overall cost. So those are some things we're gonna bring in the financial, in the budget adjustments. That'll be coming forth pretty soon, fairly soon. I guess we're talking about doing one in July. We're gonna be doing budget adjustments twice a year to stay in compliance with statute. I'm looking forward to turning this in before the end of the month, the state auditor's office. Rhonda, welcome to your first meeting.
Thank you.
So, glad to have you here. The next meeting that we are having will be on July 5th. That is a Wednesday, not because Tuesday is July 4th, so we'll be having a Wednesday night council meeting. There will be a 5:30 work session. Harold Bench with the Greene County Commission will be here to present the prescription drug monitoring program. I've sent out kind of a draft of what this is looking like. Springfield, Greene County, and Republic will be, at least we're being asked to consider it. What I've asked for doesn't mean that we're going to basically sign it, but what I asked for was them to come in and do a 5:30 work session to at least explain what that is. online with work sessions. The next meeting, the second meeting in July, we'll actually have one on the property. The mayor asked us to look into it. Council had as well, talking about the City Hall property. We'll be bringing that forward, but I wanted to provide you a chance with the prescription drug monitoring program, because that's something that's new to everybody. The state legislature was working on it. I'm not real fond of creating new rules, but at the same time, we got a drug problem to some situation that people are trying to address it. The legislature is working on it. I anticipate they'll work on it at the next legislative session. So we'll be bringing it to you for consideration for the region to work on it. Again, it's still up for council's discussion. Last week at the OTO meeting, we I may have mentioned this, it's in your report, that a couple items that occurred. One of the projects was the priority projects of regional significance. One from 174 to James River Freeway. That was added, but that was added to the priority list. That was not originally listed as that. And then also this ITS fiber project. This may not mean much to most, but to me, I thought it was a big deal to get the fiber ran to it's also going to Republic, Nixa, and Ozark, but that will help with the signalization timing in our community. We do not have that. It's very difficult when you consider that as a challenge. So those are things that make it a little bit, ingress and egress through the community. But if we could figure out a way to help 174 to James River, and for that to be on a list at OTO as some project of regional significance, I do believe that our presence there is helping. Being a part of it, it's just fun to be a part of what's going on with the OTO and what's going on with the region. And also, it was brought up at the last meeting to discuss about mowing the median. There were several MoDOT representatives at the meeting as well, and so we were able to discuss and work out a situation where we can mow the median. I do not necessarily, we don't have the resources or the equipment necessarily to go all the way to James River, but I do think for us to work on the gateway from MM into the city, there's still going to be some provisions, some protocol, working with MoDOT to get that done. That was very good. And so you will also note in your report tonight is the project status report. So this is the report that I've mentioned to you about projects that are ongoing in the city and kind of the status of those projects. And so while maybe small print, we can make it a little bit larger. But as I suggested at the last meeting, you'll probably find that there are a lot more things going on than probably what we're reporting, and things that are moving in the city. But this spreadsheet is something that we'll provide every 2 weeks. So tomorrow we have our project status meeting, and we'll go over where these projects are at. The ones highlighted in yellow pretty much have been listed as significant, that need to move forward, or that are the high priority that they're working on. So I hope this will help a little bit. You may see some things on there. People are asking you, what's this project all about? You can tell them, like, well, where's Oakwood and Hines? You can look on there and you can pretty much see what the status of it is, or what the next step of it is. If something's not on there, let us know. So we're trying to add, that list gets bigger and bigger. And I appreciate staff working on a new process that'll help communicate these things. I like it. I've always used one, but never really provided it to council. So this is something that gives you better insight as to what's going on. So welcome your feedback on that information. And so I would encourage, again, with the Commissioner, Mr. Bench, who will be here in 2 weeks, given the fact that Greene County provided the money for the roundabout, this would be a great opportunity to reach out to them to express our appreciation for the $100,000 that Greene County provided. So, or if you want to send a message, that was discussed at OTO this week, and just want to express our appreciation. So that is all I have. Thank you.
Thank you. I'd like to talk briefly about the audit. I want to commend council and staff, Debbie, Mr. Cameron, everybody who was involved in that. We keep talking about trust as not an internal control, but we earn that from the citizens by being transparent and open. And this is a huge step, and sometimes there are some painful things that come out in an audit, but it's also nice to see a lot of the good things that come out in an audit. And Debbie, we appreciate you being here a lot of late nights, even if you did crash the system. But it was done with hard work. It was. I mean, being here every night until it's getting dark outside in the summer is a lot. So thank you very much for everything that you've done. Mr. Cummings, thank you guys for the audit. Again, some of that's hard to hear, but That's what we need to hear. And I think the council all would agree that that gets us where we need to be. Also, the 5-year capital plan, I think that's something that is so imperative to the growth of our city and knowing where our money's gonna go in 5 years, not just planning for a year in advance or 6 months or planning for emergencies. So again, thank you for that and the committee that's gonna be working on the capital improvements that we push forward on. I wanted to also welcome Rhonda Lou Zader, our new city attorney, to our first meeting. We're happy to have her here. She didn't have to get on to me too much tonight, but we're happy that she's here for sure. And then also welcome Aldi's. We're happy to have them in the city of Republic. The last thing I have is I've gotten some messages regarding the availability to watch council meetings on the website. There were some problems, and most of it was just, as you'll see back there tonight, there's a new camera. And it wasn't that anybody was doing anything wrong. It was just that the system wasn't ideal for what we were trying to use it for. So this gives us a better pathway to get those meetings onto the website and eventually hope to do some new things in the future with that camera. Probably not go into a whole lot of detail because we don't want to promise anything we can, unless you would like to talk about that briefly.
I will. I would anticipate in the next 2 to 3 weeks that we'll be broadcasting live, and those will actually post to the website the following day. So it'll actually be something that we can post to our Facebook page. Well, that'll actually be a live feed rather than taped and then delayed by 1 day. So it's actually something that you can see real time.
And again, that keeps in with the transparency of the city. We want everybody, if you can't make it to a meeting, we want to make it available so that you have a way to watch the meetings if you can't come to those. So that's all I had. I believe I will go around the room for the council reports. Mr. Dykeman.
Yes, I would like to thank Debbie and her group, as well as KPM, because I've had an opportunity to work with KPM also on another project, and they've done a super job on it. And I think it's, sometimes hard to take in what the numbers are, but they're there and it's real. And I appreciate all of that. I'd like to welcome Rhonda. Glad you're on board. I mean, I'm sure by the next meeting she'll hit you more, but that's all. Thanks. One last thing, Mayor, is I did, about 3 weeks ago, I attended the newly elected officials conference in Columbia. It was a day and a half, and I learned a lot from it. It was well worth the time, and learned, like I say, it seen a lot of the information and getting up-to-date information. The new Sunshine Law books, they gave those to us there at the meeting, and I brought back enough for all this, for the council and some of the staff. So, but they're really there to help, and they gave us phone numbers, names, if you got questions, call. And a lot of it was outside legal companies that was there giving a presentation, and they gave us all their, personal numbers. If you got questions, don't hesitate to call, even though they're not contracted with the city. So I thought it was great. Very much appreciate the opportunity to go.
Thank you, sir. Mr. Mendez.
Just want to echo the thanks again for all your hard work. It's nice to have the visibility into the financials, know where we stand, and the transparency, Mr. Cameron, that's being created that I've seen over the last few months is really refreshing. So just thank you all for that. Really, really appreciate that. I want to welcome you as well, Rhonda. It's a pleasure to have you on board. So glad to have you. And then I have something, I'm going to break mold a little bit here, and I got something to talk to the council about a little bit. So I've been present for a number of these daycares coming to us for special use permits, okay? And out of the ones that I've seen come before us, we've approved the majority of them. The state spends time and their resources certifying these folks as professionals, doing the inspections, sending in the people to do periodic reviews and ensure all the safety protocols in place. And they certify them for 10 children out of the gate. The special use permit process that we go through, to me, seems more like a disservice because it's very subjective. It seems like it to me. Squeaky wheel gets kind of the attention. So I'd like to put this for discussion at this council. We either need to come up with better measurable criteria for this or do away with it altogether. But I would, in my opinion, that's just my opinion. So I would entertain your guys' thoughts on this, but this seemed like the appropriate place to bring this to you all. So just wanted to share that and hope to have some discussion around it.
Thank you, Mr. Mendez. Ms. Durian?
I'm just going to echo what everybody else is saying. Thank you guys very much. I love what you said about ethics. I feel like that is imperative in our community, that if we're representing the city, we wear that badge, we should wear that badge at all times. So I really appreciated you saying that. I'm so excited that you've been able to see results from you being here and see the improvement in your neighborhood. That's very exciting. So that was fun to hear. Welcome. And I think that the live feed would be really cool. I've had several calls about not being able to view the meetings, so that's awesome.
I'll break in for just 1 second. Mr. Mendez, I think with your conversation, the best thing to do so that we can stay in line with the agenda items, I agree it needs to be talked about. So we would ask for council's consensus on whether or not to put that as an agenda item for discussion. That's right. At the next meeting. So we'll ask for council's consensus as we go through to do that. So, Mr. Backman.
Agree.
I agree.
Mr. Ann? Okay, and we'll go on to your report and ask for your consensus afterwards. Mr. Smith?
The same as everybody else. I mean, I'm glad we're making progress, transparency. Great. We're improving our finance department. And positive growth. And I'm good for putting it on the agenda.
Mr. Self?
Thank you as well. Welcome as well. Welcome Aldi's, but I also want to say, to all the businesses that have been here, that are still here, today's a new day in Republic. If you're thinking of expanding, relocating, doing something different, it's time. It's time to come to the table and let's talk. It's very refreshing. I don't know how many of you all were there at the Aldi's. I know Mr. Wilson, Mr. Dyman, Mr. Cameron. There's a lot of people there, and that's just proof of growing and bringing more business to town. And that's huge for us because we as individuals, as groups, as businesses, we have a choice to do business in our town. And the more that we control our local economy, our vote is your dollar. So where you spend your dollar is a vote. And so I would highly, encourage everybody that whatever you're doing, in whatever business, if it can be done locally, let's make it done locally. So.
And your consensus on that?
Yes.
Thank you, sir. Mr. Wilson?
I'd just like to thank David and MoDOT for getting the speed limit sign moved out at the high school. It needed to be done.
Sir, and your consensus on the daycare item being on the agenda?
That's fine with me.
Mr. Jones?
I consent on discussion as well. Mr. Cameron, I do thank you for your energy toward something as simple as mowing the median, because it does make a difference on that first impression that anyone has coming into town. It's like seeing litter on the road. An unmown median means they don't care about what they look like, so that's a big deal. And also, the task list, that's huge. I'm a huge task list guy. Go to work and that's what I have, so that's good. What's the format? What is this?
Excel.
Just an Excel.
So you could get that in Excel. We could send that to you in Excel.
I know that it's absolutely necessary. This is great. If you're gonna have it in this form, that's great. And also just the excitement that this report generates with the businesses, to echo a little bit, Mr. Self was saying, it's great to see where these, because I get asked all the time, what's the, when the big whiskey's coming, or when are they gonna open, this is great to be able to take that, and I can finally tell one of my daughter's friends when Chang Chaw's gonna open, because I'm tired of him asking me. So, that's good stuff. Appreciate that.
Mr. Shears?
being the last on the list, I don't think I have an original thought tonight. I had 2 or 3 before Mr. Dyken started, and then they've been down the road for a lot of things now, someone mentioned. So, finance kudos, gee, I've come in and signed checks before, and these tables would be, up to here with just notebooks and everything, so we really appreciate it. I think we finally have an idea, or at least a clearer picture of where we are financially. No disrespect to others that have done it, but I think it's probably more clear now than it's ever been. And again, Dave, thanks so much for this. I've mentioned a couple times as far as the task list, and that's great. But Mrs. Tuck was here tonight, I think she's still here. And that was refreshing too, for her to come and have a concern, about our neighborhood, and be able to react with your public staff, and then get things resolved. And that's what it's about. That's what we're here for, is to do that. And I think this task list will even help us more to see, what concerns are, what the, outcome can be, and how we get there. And welcome Mrs. Luxader. That was another thing I had, that someone mentioned it. And yes, on Jason's discussion, we've had that discussion before with different councils, but I think it's good to have it.
Yeah. Okay. So now, we would ask to go into executive session. No further action other than announcing adjournment by the mayor shall take place after an executive session that is scheduled as the last matter on the agenda, unless otherwise stated on the agenda, or is allowed per RSMO 610.02, relating RSMO 610.021.3, hiring, firing, promotion, or disciplining personnel. Closed session, closed vote, closed record. Ask for a motion and a second to go into executive session.
Motion.
Second.
Motion in a second, roll call vote.
Councilmember Self?
Aye.
Councilmember Wilson?
Aye.
Councilmember Jones?
Aye.
Councilmember Brashears?
Aye.
Councilmember Dykeman?
Aye.
Councilmember Mendez?
Aye.
Councilmember Duran?
Aye.
Councilmember Smith?
Aye.
Carries 8-0. We will take a 5-minute recess and go into executive session. Thank you all for coming.